Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Alrighty. What was turned on?
Well, when I came in, the sound on that first on the amp was turned on, and there was no sound. Okay, well, there's no sound on that TV.
Is it on now?
I don't know. But we listened. We watched Facebook sound recording.
Mangalarti? Anyway, it's working now. So. It's not broken, go fix it. Okay. All right. Ready. Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Ho Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Hirivadodhaure Gopi Jana Pallava Hirivadodhaure Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Manachare Yamuna Tera Manachare Jaya Radhu Madhova Kunya Vihare Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Vihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadodhare Gopidana Palaba Girivaradani Yasudanandana Brachararurandahuna Yasudanandana Brachararurandahuna Yamuna Tera Vanachare Yamuna Tera Vanachare Joy Radhamadhuva Kunjabihahore Jaya Radhamadhuva Kunjabihahare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidakacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikavanath Shayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Gover Dan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Vaturanam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Parimananda Hari Hari Gaur All glory is the sum of the devotees, all glory is the sum of the devotees, all glory is the sum of the devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vishpadaya Krishna Vastaya Buddhaya Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami States as what they say says in the body. Text 3. Srimad Bhagavatam, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 23rd Chapter, Text 3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prayata Deva Yajanam Brahmanha Brahma Vadinaha Akshatram Angirasam Nama Hi Asate Swarga Kamyam Priyata Deva Yajanam Brahmana Brahmavadinaham Shatram Angira Sangnama Yasate Swarga Kamyaya Priyata Deva Yajanam Brahmana Brahmavadinaha Satram Angira Samnama Yaste Swarga Kamyaya Prayata Deva Yajanam Brahmana Brahmavadinaha Shatramangira Sangnama Yaste Swarga Kamyaya. Okay. Okay. So I'm trying to get loud enough. Priyata, please go. Devya Janam to the sacrificial arena. Brahmanaha, Brahmanas. Brahmavadinaha, followers of the Vedic injunctions. Shatram, a sacrifice. Angirasam Nama, known as Angirasa. Ahi, indeed. Asate, they are now performing. Swarga Kamya, with a motive of promotion to heaven. So translation, Lord Krishna said, please go to the sacrificial arena where a group of brahmanas learned in the Vedic injunctions are now performing the Angirasa sacrifice to gain promotion to heaven. So you can repeat. Lord Krishna said, please go to the sacrificial arena where a group of brahmanas learned in Vedic injunctions are now performing the Angirasa sacrifice to gain promotion to heaven. So I'm just going to read the Charya's commentaries. I think I'm going to take 2 days on this verse. This is a really important verse. To show the Brahmanas that he does not give mercy to those who do not have bhakti, even though they are endowed with austerity, knowledge, and religious principles, and that he gives mercy to those that have bhakti, their wives, even though they lack knowledge and austerity. Krishna sent the boys to the Brahmanas. Jiva Goswami, go to the sacrificial arena, Deva Yajanam. They are chanting the Vedas, but do not know the meaning of the Vedas. They are performing a sacrifice for elevation to Swarga. And finally, Sanatan Goswami. Go to the sacrificial arena, Deva Yajanam. They are chanting the Vedas, but do not know the meaning of the Vedas, or they do not know how to chant the Vedas. Brahmavadana. Nor do they know the meaning. Thus they are performing a sacrifice for elevation to Swarga. He indicates certainty. In the next verse, he puts himself in a lower position and glorifies Balaram. Though he had all good qualities like humility, his statement indicates lack of respect for them as they desired Swarga. So the reason this is important, so Om Gana, well, actually I should read the verse again, sorry about that one. Let me read the verse. Prayata Deva Yachanam Brahmana Brahmavadanaha Shatram Angita Sangama taste swarga kamyeha. So Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the reason that I'm going to maybe take 2 days on this and have a lot of material on it is that there's this whole concept, and it's based to a certain extent on the bodily identification that people have according to their birth. And there's this whole, yes, it's based 100% on that. And there's this whole concept that Brahmanas are superior and even superior to Vaishnavas. And then basically underlying this whole point is that we are the bodies. We are the bodies. And based on the birth that we have, we're, let's say, restricted to certain activities. Even though we may have, according to Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, different guna and different karma, but still we're restricted. So this is actually pervading a lot of our, of course, not this misunderstanding, but the counteraction of this is pervading a lot of our philosophy. Okay, I'll speak louder. Is pervading. I could just see you make a sign, and I know to speak louder. The counteraction of this particular misunderstanding pervades a lot of our philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and there's many people who are misunderstanding this particular aspect of our philosophy and Krishna consciousness, and so they make propaganda stating, and I'm not going to get into the specifics, that basically your devotional service or what you can do is conditioned upon the body. I'm not going to get into the present controversy, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do is make reference today to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's discussion on this whole subject matter at the Balaghai place, which is in Bengal, when is this whole discussion, who is superior, Brahmins or Vaishnavas. And there's some quotes from Prabhupada that nullify this particular conception. And anyway, I'm going to tell the story about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And then if I get time, or tomorrow, I'm going to talk about some interactions that one of our godbrothers had with another godbrother who was very much attached to the bodily distinction, and has nothing to do with the female Diksha Guru thing. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into that in the class. So it has something to do with a devotee who was a disciple of Prabhupada named Krishna Balaram Swami, who made a lot of propaganda that actually only people born in Brahmin families could be gurus, basically. And then one of my other godbrothers counteracted him in a very beautiful article, in which I'm going to make reference to, maybe tomorrow or maybe later today if I get to it. Anyway, so before we get to the meeting that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to establish the superior of Vaishnavas, also to establish that Vaishnavas were automatically Brahmanas, we're going to talk about what a Brahman is. And according to the Bhagavad Gita, we have the qualities that of a Brahman, Sana, Dava, Tapakshocham, Shanti, Rajarumevacha, Gyanabhigyanamastikyam, Brahma Karma Subhavajam. These are actually secondary qualities. The primary quality is described in Vedic literatures as one who knows Brahman. And if one knows Brahman, that's a primary, like we talk about Mukhya and Gona. So the primary quality is to know Brahman, and then the second qualities arise from the primary quality, just like we talk about the qualities of a Vaishnava. I mean, the primary quality of a Vaishnava is what? Anyavi Lashita Shinyam Jnana Karmana Vritam Anukulyena Krishnana Shilanam. That he's simply devoted to Krishna and devoid of any other desire, subtle or gross, or even desire for liberation. That's the primary quality. And then the secondary qualities come as a result of the primary qualities. So a Brahman I mean, of course, sometimes there's other definitions of Brahman, such as, ritualistic Brahman, or, anyway, there's other definitions. But really, the Vedas give the definition of Brahman as one who knows Brahman. And then one becomes peaceful, equipoise, samadhamma, austere, accepting everything favorable, rejecting everything unfavorable, which is the same as Krishna consciousness, as the surrendering practices that were given to us by Lord Chaitanya. Shantir, tolerant, honest, religious, all these things arise because one knows Brahman. So really, that's the essence of it. So if one has the qualities, all these qualities, and they're very steady in those qualities, yasyasti bhakti bhagavata kinchana savar gunas tatra samasate sara, then one is understood by examining someone's qualities that they know Brahman. Anyway, and so therefore you have these stories in the Vedic literatures, like this famous story of Satyakama. Satyakama, I'll speak louder. What? I'm okay. I'm okay, you're okay. Yato mat tato put. So, Satyakama was born actually from basically a very loose woman, what we would call a girlfriend nowadays, or in the old days, a prostitute. So he was born from a lady who had many different affairs, and he didn't know who his father was. So basically, I mean, he wanted to find out. He went to his guru, Gautama Rishi, and he said, "My dear Guru Dev, will you accept me as your disciple?" And Guru Maharaj only wanted to accept Brahmins as his disciples. And so he said to him, "Well, you got to tell me who your father is." And so he didn't know who his father was, so he went back to his mother. And it's interesting, Prabhupada oftentimes gives the example that if you want to know, talking about if you want to know Krishna, you got to go to the Vedic literatures. So he uses this particular analogy. If you want to if you want to know your father, you got to go to your mother, because your mother's the best one. You weren't around at that time, so she knows. But in this particular case, she didn't know because she was a loose woman. So she said to him, "I don't know who your father is." I mean, it could have been any one of a number of people. So he goes back to his guru, and the guru says, he says to the guru, "I don't know, my mother doesn't know." And the guru said, "You're a Brahmin, because you're telling the truth." So the guru was able to ascertain according to the qualities. And here we're not even talking about Vaishnavism. We're talking about the qualities that someone exhibits and in the mode of goodness. And of course, to remain stable in the mode of goodness, you need to be a Vaishnava. And that's why we recited that verse previously, Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavata Kinchana Sarar Gunas Tatra Samasate Hara Arabhavaktasha Kato Mahad Guna Mano Retain Asate Davato Bahi. Then if one is a devotee, automatically all the good qualities of the Vaishnavas develop, or good qualities develop. And then if one is not a devotee, then one's so-called good qualities are Mano Retain Asati Davato Bahi. They're simply on the mental platform, or not unstable. So anyway, that's what a Brahman is. So let me draw actually a parallel right now, which is really interesting, because here in this particular pastime, one of the underlying themes, or one of the most important themes, in addition to the love the ladies had for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the superiority of Krishna consciousness. And so there's a parallel to this particular story in the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just like we hear from the Gauragana Dashtipika, how many of the devotees in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes were also devotees in Krishna's pastimes. Actually, the primary devotees, they were all devotees in Krishna's pastimes. In the same way, there's parallel pastimes or parallel lessons given in the activities of Lord Chaitanya and in the activities of Krishna. So in the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we find that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a social revolutionary, establishing the principle, the same principle that's being established in this particular chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, establishing the principle of the superiority of Vaishnavism, regardless or irregardless, depending on your English, of the body. Pretty nice, isn't it? And so, therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established, let's say, that Haridas Thakur was the Namacharya. He had some of his disciplic descendants, such as Narottama Das Thakur and even Shaimananda, were not born in Brahmin families, in one sense were considered Shudras, established as acharyas. So you see these parallels between both of these stories, which I found quite interesting. And then we'll go ahead to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's what's called a showdown. Reading some information. It was a showdown between those who were propagating the philosophy that Brahmanas were superior to Vaishnavas, and they had the right to perform certain sacrifices, whereas the Vaishnavas, if they weren't born in a Brahmin family, didn't have the right to be guru, didn't have the right to do a lot of things like that, perform sacrifices. So, this showdown, or at least the opposing party, was headed up by an interesting person named Vipini Vihari Goswami, was one of the main heads, who was the guru, or the initiating guru, of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And this is really interesting. And of course, later on, Bhakti Vinod Thakur accepted as a substantial guru, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So we see Bhakti Vinod Thakur is establishing this principle of Siksha Sampradaya as being more important than Diksha Sampradaya, and we see it previously in our Sampradaya too, in relationship to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vijayabhushana. That link is the actual link in our Sampradaya, although Baladev Vijayabhushana was initiated properly, and he never rejected his guru. Neither did Bhakti Vinod Thakur reject his guru. But Bhakti Vinod Thakur did not want to go to the showdown. That's the point. And the reason he didn't want to go to the showdown is he didn't want to confront his Diksha guru. So he, can you imagine, your Diksha guru is arguing some point. And sometimes we actually find that in this con too. That Diksha guru is arguing some point that you disagree with. Oh my God. And we're not talking about Prabhupada now. That you disagree, and you say, I'm not going to that V.S. Puja ceremony, or something like that. So it's interesting, because Prabhupada is the absolute authority here in the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, and things sometimes are a little bit give and take. So anyway, so he didn't want to go, so he feigned sickness. And because he feigned sickness, he said to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who wasn't sannyasi at that particular point, he said to him, you should go. And because Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had written this elaborate article, I read part of it last night. It's 160 pages. I have it in my database, or it's not in the database, but I have it on my computer if anyone's interested in seeing it. But it's 160 pages with elaborate citations and everything like that. And basically, he wasn't able to read the whole article or speak the whole article at this particular conference, but he took the essence of this article in dealing. So here's what happened at the conference. There one side, they were not only the smarta Brahmins on one side, but there were also the Jata Goshayas. So he had to argue against both of these groups. Smarta Brahmins means that someone must be born in a Brahmin family in order to be a Brahmin, to be qualified to perform sacrifice, to initiate, to be a guru, and everything like that. Actually, it's interesting. You'll find that in India, to a large extent, even when the devotees, and I'm not going to get into the details of the female Diksha Guru thing, but even when the devotees went to research the idea of female or Vaishnavi Diksha Gurus, they went to South India and talked to the Ramanuja Pandits. And the Ramanuja Pandits, they said, well, ladies definitely can't be gurus. And they also said, well, you Westerners also definitely can't be gurus either. But those who were using the argument, they left off the half of what the Ramanuja Pandits said, which is interesting. That's an interesting method of argumentation, that you get some evidence and you don't present all the evidence that would go against your particular ideas. Anyway, so there were the Jata Goshais. Jata Goshais are those who say they're the caste Goswamis, that, unless you were born, and these are not particularly Brahmin families, but these are the ones like Nityananda Vamsa and people like that who are from the Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavas and their followers and their descendants and everything like that. Those are the Jata Goshais. And not all the descendants of the 6 Goswamis' disciples, because the 6 Goswamis didn't have any seminal descendants, but Lord Nityananda did. But not all of them are actually Jata Goshais. In other words, not all of them are actually proclaiming that they're the only ones. There's many of them that are right now favorable to ISKCON and accept ISKCON gurus. So it's not, we're not criticizing all the seminal descendants of the followers of the Goswamis of Vrindavan. So anyway, so the Jata Goshais anyway insist also that the posts of gurus are also hereditary positions because of their particular family. So this is like a stranglehold on Vaishnavism and even on Hinduism. So they arranged a meeting at the Sujangar village in Midnapur, district of Bengal. And it was under the chairmanship of Bipini Vihari Goswami, which is really interesting. But Purva Paksha. Now Purva Paksha Purva means before. And there's Uttara Paksha. In other words, this was, it's almost a derogatory. They declared their anti-devotional manifesto. They said, unless one is born in a Brahmin family, is disqualified from worshiping the Shalagram Shila and giving initiation. And they began their whole argument by saying that Narottama Das Thakur and Shyamananda had contravened Shastra. They went against Shastra. I mean, really offensive. And they said, well, as far as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he understood Shastra. That's why he only presented Raghunath Das Goswami with a Govardhan Shila, because as a Shudra, he was disqualified from the Shalagram Shila worship. You can see the offensiveness here. And actually they began to criticize. They said worship of Govardhan Shila has no Shastric basis. I mean, what about the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? Isn't it? Worshipping Govardhan. Anyway. And they rejected half of the Hari Bhakti Vilas, even though the Hari Bhakti Vilas was compiled to try to attract these people to Krishna consciousness. And on the other side, of course, was Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and other devotees, Vishwa Bharanda Deva Goswami, who was the head of the Shaimanandi sect, which also agreed with us. And it was a 3-day public event. The manuscript that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was making reference to was called Brahmana o Vaishnava Taratmya Vishayaka Siddhanta, which means the conclusion concerning the comparison of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And it's described here that Bhakti Vinod Thakur had been in so much pain, he'd been unable to rise from bed. But his pain was not material. Sometimes you look at a Vaishnava and you say, Acharya, where's that verse? Acharyaman Viganagam Navamanye Takarichit Marchubujusu Yate Sarvadeva Mayoga. One shouldn't see a Vaishnava as material. So the pain was the pain of this offensiveness going on. And that was causing the pain. And the pain that he understood that he personally couldn't go there because his Diksha guru was there. So that's a very painful thing. So anyway, so a lot of people came from all over Bengal and from other places in Orissa. I mean, this was like a major meeting. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was the youngest person at this particular meeting. He actually started one of the first to speak. It was decided by the organizers. He began citing numerous scriptural references praising Brahmanas. And so, this is like a debating technique. That he praised them, you're all wonderful, Brahmanas are superior. Anyway, he brought out all these quotes. And then eventually, he started talking about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defying caste rigidity, which I talked about before, and talked about Haridas Thakur, and then how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had induced Shudra Ramananda Roy to teach him about Krishna and Radharani. And really laid into these particular Smarta Brahmanas. And basically, after this allocution of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there was nothing further for anyone to say. Actually, he spoke in the beginning and also at the end. Twice he spoke, twice. And they slinked away, and Madhusudana Goswami declared him as an avatar of Shukadeva Goswami for accomplishing this. It's amazing. And there were jubilant crowds, and we all know the story that the guards were worried about the safety of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And so they took him aside and dunked his feet into some buckets of water and then distributed the water to all the people there. And then there was even further arguments after that, because then they went back to challenge him again. They said, Lord Chaitanya is not mentioned in the Vedas, and that the Gora mantras, because they were challenging the Gora mantras in our chanting of the Gayatri mantras. They said it's an innovation. Based on our culture, everything a person does and says, especially any philosophy, must be based on Shastra and accepted by the previous acharyas. So this was actually even heavier criticism of Vaishnavism than Smarta Brahmanas were giving. These were actually the Smartas, that they were giving in the beginning. So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came up with quotes from the Upanishads that verified that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was indeed the Yuga Avatar. The Tantras, the Puranas, and Srila Gorkashordas Babaji Maharaj was present in that particular assembly and was extremely satisfied to hear his disciple's speech. So he was hidden, a very humble devotee. And so both of these topics, eligibility for Brahmana and Guruship and the divinity of Lord Chaitanya, had been established conclusively by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And then at that point, this was actually the point at which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur became widely established as a sensational new proponent of the supremacy of Lord Chaitanya and of his genuine teachings. So it was very important to kick off the preaching mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Finally, I wanted to read. We'll get to the other thing tomorrow. But some of Prabhupada's quotes from this. Anyone who is qualified with Krishna consciousness, this is from a lecture in Bombay, he can become guru. It doesn't matter where he is born, what is his family and identification. It doesn't matter. He must know the science. It is very practical. Just like you go to consult an engineer, a medical man, or some lawyer, you do not ask him whether he's a Brahmin or a Shudra. If he's qualified, if he can help you in a particular subject matter, you consult with him. you take his help. That is practical. So similarly, in the spiritual matter, it doesn't matter what he is. If he knows Krishna, then he can become guru. It doesn't matter. These are very heavy statements by Prabhupada. So one may be very illiterate, no education. This is from a Vyas Puja address. No education, no scholarship, may not be born in a Brahmin family, or may not be a sannyasi. There are so many qualifications, but one may not have all these qualifications. He may be rascal number one, but still he can become spiritual master. That's interesting. But Prabhupada saying rascal number one according to material estimation, not spiritual estimation. How? Amara Gai. As Krishna says, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, if you follow, then you become spiritual master. One may be rascal number one. Prabhupada is repeating that again. From material estimation. But if he simply strictly follows whatever is said by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or his representative spiritual master, then he becomes guru. Next quote. Therefore, at the present moment, because these purificatory processes are not accepted, and even in India accepted, they are unable, everything has become topsy-turvy. Therefore, the Shastra says, accept everyone as Shudra, Kalo Shudra Sambhavat. There's no more Brahman, Kshatriya, or Vaishya. All Shudras we have to accept. Because no Vedic culture, no Garbhadan Sanskara, they are born like cats and dogs. So where is this division? It's a pretty heavy statement by Prabhupada. I mean, Prabhupada was following in the footsteps of his spiritual master using this cutting technique here. So just one other thing. So Sanatana Goswami gives this example. As copper and tin, these two metals mixed with mercury, there can be production of gold. Similarly, by proper initiation, by the proper spiritual master, one Shudra, even though he's a Shudra, less than a Shudra, Varna Sankara or Chandala, he can become Dvija Brahman. So our process is to make Dvija, Pancharatra Ki Vidi. Whoops, I get time. That is recommended. Say Guru. Who can become Guru? Generally a Brahmin, a sannyasi, that is, they are forced. A Brahmin is the Guru of other Varnas, sannyasi is the Guru of all Varnashram, that is. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that is social system. If there is a Brahmin, if there is a sannyasi, one should give preference to him to accept Guru. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that is not the criterion. One must be well expert, experienced, well aware of the science of Krishna. He shall be Guru. That's from a Srimad Bhagavatam Lecture, Vrindavan, October 30th, 1976. Regarding the validity of the Brahminical status as we accepted, because in the present age there is no observance of the Garbhadan ceremony. Even a person born in a Brahmin family is not considered Brahmin. He is called Dvija Bandhu, or unqualified son of a Brahmin. Under the circumstance, the conclusion is that the whole population is now Shudra, as is stated, Kalo Shudra Sambhavat. For the Shudras, there is no initiation according to the Vedic system, but according to the Pancharatrika system, initiation is offered to a person who is inclined to take Krishna consciousness. During my Guru Maharaj's time, even a person who was coming from a Brahmin family, he was initiated in other words, he was given another initiation, according to the Pancharatrika system, taking him to be a Shudra. So the birthright Brahmanism is not applicable at the present moment. The sacred thread inaugurated by my Guru Maharaj according to the Pancharatrika system in Hari Bhakti Vilasam Sanatana Goswami must continue. It does not matter whether the priestly class accepts it or not. When my Guru Maharaj Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami introduced this system, it was protested even by his inner circle of godbrothers or friends. Of course, he had no god brothers, but there were many disciples of Bhakti Vinod Thakur who were considered as godbrothers who protested against this action of my Guru Maharaj, but he didn't care for it. There's a letter to Achutananda, 14th November 1970, so we have to end now. So, and tomorrow, I'm going to go over even a more interesting thing, a discussion that one of my I have to read it from the computer or something, that one of my godbrothers, Nrsimha Maharaj, had with this devotee who actually came from a so-called Brahmin family, who was actually creating havoc in ISKCON by declaring that only people coming from families like his could be gurus. Yeah, I mean, he really did a lot of research on this. It's really amazing. I think that'll be tomorrow's class. And that's quite a lengthy paper. He wrote about it. So it'll probably